Oceanographer Tom, his wife Julia, and their 2 children Cassie and Ben set off on a yacht trip in the Caribbean. While Tom and Ben are focused on fishing and Cassie is distracted by her gadget, Julia decides to take a swim. Suddenly, she feels a wave of unease despite the calm sea, sensing a large presence beneath her. At the same time, the yacht's instruments begin malfunctioning, but Tom, absorbed in fishing, doesn't notice. Julia's unease intensifies until she starts to drown. She screams, but no one hears her at first. The sea appears to pull her away from the yacht. Finally, Tom hears her cries and rushes to the helm. He steers toward her, dives into the water, and, with the help of the children, manages to get her back aboard. After reviving her, Tom scolds Julia for not telling anyone before swimming. Julia apologizes, and the family moves on, ready to celebrate. Today is Ben's birthday. Tom lights candles on a cake, and everyone congratulates Ben and gives him presents. Cassie captures the moment with a group photo. Her boyfriend calls during the celebration and casually mentions the swim. But before the conversation continues, a fierce storm begins in the background. Cassie grows anxious, but her boyfriend assures her he's fine. Then the connection drops. She informs her parents about the storm on land, but they are suddenly interrupted by loud thuds. They rush to the deck to find enormous whale carcasses surfacing around the yacht. Tom explains that whales can become disoriented in storms, but these are crashing into the boat, endangering them. Tom dives in to investigate, but injures himself on the propeller. He returns aboard, and Julia stitches the cut. He believes the yacht's shafts are bent, possibly from a tail strike, which may prevent them from sailing further. Cassie tries to restore communication, but there's no signal, and the radio is silent. Tom checks their supplies. There's water for a few days, and since they're on a shipping route, he's hopeful they'll be found. Suddenly, strange sounds echo outside. When they check the deck, they see glowing objects falling from the sky. Tom risks starting the engine to move them away from the falling debris. He dodges one impact, but the engine sustains damage. As the next object lands close, the family realizes they're not meteorite. They're falling artificial satellites. A powerful wind begins to blow, and the yacht's instruments go haywire. Panic sets in as the family takes cover inside, while the vessel is violently tossed by waves. They put on life jackets and brace for impact. Suddenly, a strange, high-pitched ringing fills the air, causing nosebleeds and nausea. Tom fires a flare gun in desperation, but it has no effect. The family endures a terrifying night and is shocked but grateful to find themselves alive by morning. However, there's now a huge hole in the yacht side, and it's a mystery how it's still floating. Stepping outside, they're stunned. The ocean has vanished, and their yacht now rests on rocky ground in the middle of a barren desert. Later, Tom tries to keep everyone calm, insisting others must have survived. He takes compass readings and discovers that north is no longer where it should be. The Earth's poles have shifted, an event that's happened in Earth's distant past. The sea has apparently moved to where land once was, and Tom fears humanity may be mostly wiped out. Cassie is devastated and isolates herself in the cabin. Julia checks the food and water supplies, while Ben releases colorful balloons into the sky, hoping someone, somewhere, will see them. Tom activates the radio and begins sending distress calls. To his surprise, someone responds. Nato, the captain of a small submersible. He explains that they survived because they were deep underwater when the disaster struck. But communication systems are mostly down, and rescue is unlikely. Nato warns that the sea will return in a week, and it'll be brutal. He urges the family to reach higher ground. Julia tells the children to pack. Tom then asks Nato if he can take the children to safety. Nato says the sub is tiny and lost his partner during the disaster. He can only take one person. Tom convinces him to take both kids and shares their location. He maps a route, promising to meet the sub in a couple of days. The next morning, as they prepare to leave, Tom sees a man and a dog approaching. He greets the stranger and offers water, but the man, injured and unstable, suddenly punches Tom. Julia rushes to help, just as the man stabs Tom in the chest with a crude spear. The dog keeps Julia at bay as she stands frozen in horror, realizing there's no saving Tom. She bolts toward the yacht, but the man chases after her, slashing her arm. Despite the injury, Julia manages to climb aboard. Hearing her screams, the children rush to help her, and together they barricade the cabin door. Julia quickly hides Cassie and Ben in a storage locker, handing her daughter the flare gun with strict instructions. Use it only if absolutely necessary. Meanwhile, the intruder batters the doors until they break. Julia slips into the bathroom to tend to her wound as the man heads straight to the galley and grabs food, starving and clearly desperate. With a can in hand, the man starts searching the yacht. Julia grabs a kitchen knife and hides. When he enters the cabin, she quietly jumps overboard, hiding beneath the yacht. The man peers through the damaged hull but doesn't spot her. The dog, however, attacks Julia and she is forced to kill it. The man hears the yelp, finds the dog's body outside, and grows suspicious. Meanwhile, Julia climbs back aboard through a porthole on the far side, only to fall directly into the intruder's grip. He beats her and throws her onto the couch, wrapping his hands around her throat. Cassie watches in horror and realizes it's time to act. She opens the locker and fires the flare gun. The flare knocks the attacker aside but sets part of the yacht ablaze. Julia tells the kids to flee. She slips into the galley, and when the man tries again, she kicks him, grabs their bags, and jumps into the water. Ben finds Tom's lifeless body floating nearby. Cassie rushes to her father and sobs while Julia kisses her dead husband. Just then, the attacker leaps from the burning yacht. Without a moment to lose, Julia pulls the children away and the yacht explodes behind them. They race across the barren desert and eventually find shelter in a rocky canyon with a stream. But the water is salty. Cassie offers Ben a small sip, but he refuses, blaming himself. He believes the killer saw the balloons. Cassie agrees, but Julia silences her, defending her son and saying he meant no harm. Julia tells the children to gather their strength. The journey ahead is long. Then, she spots the killer again, still hunting them. The family rushes onward. That evening, Ben finds a hammerhead shark carcass and tries to butcher it, but Julia sees the pursuer closing in and urges the children to run. They come across a field scattered with barrels of toxic waste once submerged underwater. Julia pushes them forward, despite the danger. The family presses on, moving across the ocean floor now filled with plastic and human trash, with the relentless killer always behind them. Julia soon realizes Ben is dangerously dehydrated and gives him the last drops of water. Cassie breaks down, overwhelmed and hopeless. But Julia insists they must keep going. Eventually, they stumble upon the fuselage of an old plane that had crashed into the sea and climb inside to rest. Julia pulls out the last family photo and recalls how she met Tom at the hospital after he was brought in with decompression sickness from a failed dive. The children mourn their father, saying their final goodbyes through tears. That night, a noise wakes Cassie. She steps outside and sits near the wreckage, seemingly alone. From the darkness, the killer creeps toward her, unaware it's a trap. As he reaches for her, Julia ambushes and stabs him. At dawn, they prepare to move on but discover the killer's body has been picked clean by scavengers. Something more dangerous than a man is out there. Pressing forward, Julia checks the map, but Ben suddenly bolts ahead. She yells for him to stop, but he sprints to a salty puddle and drinks. Julia drags him away, but the boy soon falls ill. They find a few plastic chairs and build a crude shelter to escape the scorching sun. As they rest, Julia hears eerie sounds outside. She checks and sees something terrifying, quickly waking the children. They flee and soon spot a massive ship surrounded by scattered cargo containers and a few dazed survivors. Julia shouts for help, but when a swarm of giant crabs appears, the survivors dash into a container and slam the door shut, ignoring her cries. The three manage to climb atop another container, though Julia is injured in the leg by one of the crabs. From above, they watch the creatures break through a crack in the survivors' container, killing everyone inside despite their efforts to fight back. Julia ties a scarf around her wound and passes out. By morning, she awakens alone and panicked, only to find out the crabs have moved on and the kids went scavenging for food and weapons. Julia cauterizes her wound while Ben inspects what they've found. Among the scattered remains, they recover a little food and water. Julia finds a radio and reaches out to Nato. He replies, saying he was also attacked by deep-sea arthropods. According to his calculations, the sea will soon return, explaining why these creatures have surfaced. Julia pleads for help, but with the map lost, she doesn't know where to go. Nato fires a flare. Ben spots it, and the family runs toward the signal. They soon spot a yellow submarine in the distance, but the uneven terrain of the former ocean floor makes reaching it a struggle. Cassie grows frustrated with her mother's single-minded focus on saving the kids, but Julia ignores her protests and urges them forward. The path forces them through a canyon polluted with toxic waste. Midway, a rock slide separates Julia from the children. She tells them to keep going, but Cassie hesitates. Julia begs her daughter to save her brother, and Cassie finally leads Ben out of the canyon. They reach the submarine, but it appears empty. Suddenly, Nato stumbles out from behind the vessel, badly injured. He admits he won't survive and tells them to get aboard. Instead, Cassie races back for her mother, who is nearly out of bullets while fighting off a wave of approaching crabs. Cassie climbs the rocks and pulls Julia to safety. They reach the submarine just as the crabs overwhelm Nato, killing him. As the family boards, a massive wave appears on the horizon, sweeping the submarine off the rocks and dragging it through the water. Julia loses consciousness, memories of the past few days flashing through her mind. When she wakes, the vessel has stopped. She opens the hatch, and they step out into the ruins of a city, carried there by the sea. Despite its promising premise, The film flopped due to numerous creative missteps,